On this episode, we look at the Way to Go school program in British Columbia. Vancouver has plans for wellness walkways near a hospital. A proposed pedestrian bridge in North Vancouver would let people cross a major highway. South of Vancouver, in Richmond, a State of the Environment report will help guide the future of the city. Pedestrian facilities are a key element of the new downtown. And finally, we have a tragic follow-up to a previous report. Stay tuned. We're in Vancouver talking with Bernadette Cowie, who's program coordinator for the Way to Go school program. What is Way to Go?
The Way to Go program is a program that is focused on creating alternatives for children to travel to school, either by walking or by bike, so that we can avoid this kind of scene here where there's just tons and tons of cars doing the school run, driving children to and from school.
We're a few minutes before school lets out, and already we have this long string of cars out in front of the school. What sort of problems does that present?
Well, what you're looking at is this combination of a huge number of cars in a small space, at the same time as you're throwing a lot of child pedestrians and child bicyclists out onto that street, even if those children are just pedestrians until they get into mom or dad's car. And that conflict between child pedestrians and vehicles is dangerous, and it's a problem in terms of their being safe, but it's also a problem in terms of the fact that they're traveling to and from school, which is usually a very short distance, often less than a kilometer, by car. And these children are learning that that's how you get around, even to go short distances, is by car. So there's two things we're concerned about. One is a traffic safety concern, and the other is children are learning the habit that one travels by car everywhere.
So what are the alternatives that you're trying to promote?
What we try to create in a school setting is what we call traffic safety awareness, which is for the parents and children become more aware of traffic issues. They learn more about pedestrian safety. Parents learn more about driving safely. I don't know if you can see what some of these cars are doing, but they do some fairly arbitrary things. They back up into crosswalks. They stop on a corner so that children don't have opportunities to safely see how to cross the street. We try to let parents know that they need to drive carefully around the school site. Then what we do is we try to create alternatives for children so they can walk together with a group, either with a group of other older students or with a parent in a walking school bus, which is one example of a formal walking group. So by creating a safer school site as well as alternatives for children to travel by walking or biking, we try to reduce the numbers of cars that access the school on the whole, in fact.
How did this program get started?
Well, what happened was that the GVRD, which is the Greater Vancouver Regional District here in BC, has a real problem with air quality, and they are responsible for air quality issues and road issues, things like infrastructure. So they were very concerned when they found out that 1 in 3 children used to go to school by car in 1984, and in 1994 they found out, quite to their shock and amazement, that 1 in every 2 children was traveling to school by car. That means that 1 of every 5 cars on the road at peak hours is taking a child to or from school. So that had a huge impact on, their concern about the road use. But it also was a concern because they have policies that say, we in our community, in this region, in this livable region, we're trying to reduce the amount of reliance people have on the automobile. And it looked as if the very youngest citizens in their community were in fact doing something quite different, which is that they were learning more and more to be traveling by car, and that was a real problem. So they wanted to do something. So they decided that they would have a pilot project, which was a trip reduction project at schools. And there was lots of ways that we could have looked at that. And we decided what we would do is we would look at individual school communities and give them the tools they needed to change the culture of that school, from a school where we all drive to a school where, no, we all walk to our school. And so we the program gives parents the tools in terms of a program manual and a lot of different resources and information and access to information and support to determine a different value in their community, so that they not only create new opportunities for children to walk or bike to school, they also value the fact that children walking and biking to school is a good thing for our community. And so that's basically what the program is. After the GVRD had organized the pilot project, we established that we would get funding through ICBC, which is the Insurance Corporation of BC, and the auto plan brokers, who are the people that sell all of us, our insurance here in BC. And the reason why they want to promote that is they want to promote traffic safety in their communities at a community level and give people the tools they need to make it a safer community. So they have a really good reason for wanting to make sure that if schools want to, they can make a difference. Tomorrow morning, they can all walk their kids to school.
So is this just in Vancouver, or?
At this point, we are making this program available to every school in BC, and well over 400 schools have requested the resources. There's only about 1,200 elementary schools in BC, so a large number of schools are interested in the program. They have requested the resources. They're starting to do some of the work, and whether they go through the whole process or not, the interest is out there, and the need for these ideas are out there, and different schools will do it differently, which is how we've devised the program. It's a very flexible program that allows different communities to use the bits and pieces that work for them. We also make it fun. We also make sure that it's about people celebrating and about children enjoying the fact that they can travel around in their own communities independently.
The only thing I see is just the problem that it has with wheel.
We're in Vancouver talking with Alan Duncan, who's a planner with the Greenways program. Recently, you've been working on a plan for something called Wellness Walkways. What is that?
The Wellness Walkways is a proposal for this particular residential neighborhood, which has 3 medical facilities in it, to make it as accessible as possible to as many people as possible in as many ways as we can. And part of it will be beautification for the people who live in the area. Some of it will be providing facilities for people who work and volunteer at the healthcare facilities, but also for the people who are patients, both short-term and longer-term patients in the neighborhood.
What sort of facilities would the patients need?
Some of the very basic ones, of course, to have curb ramps so they can actually get up on the sidewalk. The sidewalk surfaces are very rough in a lot of places. There are ramps that are missing in a lot of places. And if you're in a wheelchair for an extended period, you're very sensitive to that kind of bumpiness. If you're in a walker, the noise from the rough pavements can make it hard to carry on a conversation. If the sidewalks are too narrow, you can't go side by side, which means you can't socialize with other people in wheelchairs. A lot of people are light sensitive because of their drug treatments, so we're looking at providing shade options anyway on some of the streets. A lot of people are relatively frail and can't go very far, so what we'd like to do is have seating at every corner and hopefully mid-block seating areas as well. So if you go out, you can always see that there's another place you can sit down just a little bit further. Another idea is to have consistent wayfinding, so even if you have a mild dementia, that you could go out for a walk and be able to make a circuit and come find your way back without assistance. And also because of a lot of people who would be visiting this neighborhood, are visitors to the neighborhood, hopefully have some cultural and historical interpretation to make it more interesting for them when they do go out.
So it sounds like you've got quite a few ideas that have gone into this. What are the various steps in seeing it through to this point and then actually building things?
We started meeting with people in this neighborhood about 2 years ago and had a number of brainstorming sessions with them about what they wanted. A lot of interest in safety and security and beautification from people who live in the neighborhood, but also a lot of them are concerned about aging, of course, and the impact on them. And I think they realize that a lot of the improvements that we're talking about for the wellness walkways will serve them in the longer term if they want to stay in their own community. We've involved people, the therapeutic staff from Mount St. Joseph's, which is a hospital behind us, as well as the people in charge of Venture House, which is a group home for mentally challenged adults, and Edith Cavell, which is a seniors facility, which is just undergoing expansion right now, to talk about the various requirements of the people in their different facilities, and they're remarkably similar. That they all use the neighborhood for therapy, to go out for walks, to take people out to Main Street so they can learn how to relearn how to bank, how to go to a cafe, how to socialize. And they all use the one little park, T-Swamp Park, for picnics and recreational outings to go and feed the birds and do that sort of thing. Some of the people can't use T-Swamp Park, though, because there are no handicap benches, there are no tables that they can use for picnicking, and people are light sensitive. There are no areas where they can sit in the shade. So a lot of the retrofitting will also happen in the parks, and we're hoping that some of the park-like facilities can be provided along the route as well. We talked to people who lived along the area about planting flowers and fragrant shrubs and things along the property line as opposed to just, back in the garden. And the idea being that if you're walking along the sidewalk, even if you're visually impaired, you can still see the color, you can still enjoy that, and you can enjoy the textures and the fragrance of the plants. In that light, too, we're hoping to have a greater density of street trees, but probably smaller ones, and try and focus on flowering trees that will provide color and hopefully fragrance as well at different times of the year.
So where do you go from here? When does this actually happen?
We had some consultants, a couple of landscape architects at UBC, landscape architecture professors at UBC, who prepared a study for us. We're just finalizing and revising, actually, their recommendations. We will be rebuilding sidewalks on one stretch of Sophia Street this summer, which will be done in accordance with the concepts that are emerging. And we'll be having a meeting probably in about 2 months from now with people who live along Sophia Street to talk about where we can have the seating areas so that we have a rhythm of a bench every half block. We're hoping that next summer, we've just got some funding from the province to do a couple of the seating areas, also to do some of the improvements to T-Swamp Park, and to go through the neighborhood and redo all of the curb drops that don't exist or aren't up to standard.
We're in North Vancouver talking with Dave Perfit. What is this road behind us?
This is the Trans-Canada Highway, otherwise known as Route 1, and we're at the top of the cut in North Vancouver, near Lynn Valley Road interchange.
And if a pedestrian or a bicyclist wanted to get to the other side here, what would they have to do?
They would have to go through Lynn Valley interchange, which is not really developed properly for pedestrians and cycling movements through there. It's a very busy interchange with about 40,000 cars going through it each day. Otherwise, they'd have to go all the way down a lower grade in North Vancouver. It's quite hilly here, to Mountain Highway and cross there, which is another busy arterial road with not much space for cyclists and pedestrians along it.
So instead of going on one of those long detours, what else could be done?
Well, we could build a bridge across the highway here of a width maybe of 3 meters, and it would span the highway and would connect the plateau, which joins the two town centers of Lynn Valley Town Center to the Lonsdale Town Center. And there's lots of trails in this area and a good quiet street grid on either side with good sidewalk infrastructure and good street lighting infrastructure. So it'd be a very good connection away from heavy traffic movements for more sustainable forms of transportation.
What sort of destinations are in the area that would attract people to use the bridge?
Okay, well, first off, there's the Sutherland High School, which is on this side of the highway, which has about 250 students which attended and come from the other side of the highway, which currently have to go through the Lynn Valley interchange with all the busy traffic movements there. Also, there's the Lynn Valley Shopping Center, which is on the north side, the Karen Magnuson Recreation Center, which is on the north side, and Kirkstone Park, and Eastview Elementary School, which has some playing fields and is used for some community use. And on this side of the highway, there's Lautet Park, where we're standing, and there's 2 baseball diamonds and 4 soccer fields.
What would have to happen to get this bridge built?
Well, the city is going to conduct a feasibility study starting here in the spring of 1999. And to determine usership, I'm already confident that we'll see 500 crossings a day on this highway based on the student attendance at Sutherland High School. But it's also a very popular area for dog walkers, runners, and people just walking. Also, it connects the two major town centers in North Vancouver, so there will be some people that will choose to commute by bicycle or by foot to avoid parking costs and other transportation costs associated with cars and transit.
We're in the city of Richmond, British Columbia, talking with Laura Tate, who's a planner with the city. Recently, the city finished up a State of the Environment report. What was the inspiration on that? Why did you do it?
Well, that's a good question. I guess the simple answer is that we did it to help manage our environment better. And the reason that we needed a report to do that is governments are increasingly facing a lot of competition for the taxes, the revenues that we have. And we need to make sure that whenever we take on a project or spend money, that it's going to be used in an area where it's most needed. And the environment is a very complex area, it's a very big area, and we wanted to make sure that if we did take action, that we were focusing where we needed to take action the most. So the whole point of this report is to take a look at topics that are of interest to Richmond residents, that are important just from a basic scientific standpoint, and also areas where local government has the power to act as opposed to a more senior level of government. I think sometimes people get frustrated that we can't do enough at the local level to help environment, and they get overwhelmed. But we wanted to sort of take this into a very manageable piece and look at what we could be doing, looking also at where we were now too, to get a baseline.
And what sort of things were in the report? What did you look at?
Well, we looked at two different kinds of indicators, and an indicator is really just a numerical tool that helps you gauge where you're at with the environment. We looked first of all at our environmental assets, which are the basics: air, land, and water, how healthy those were. Then we also looked at stresses on our natural environment, and some of those stresses included things like resource consumption. They looked at land use and also transportation, which is, of course, as we all know, a big stressor on our environment. So those are the kinds of things that we looked at. We chose indicators based on, again, where we thought the city had the biggest role to play in helping to make a difference. But also, we wanted to make sure these were meaningful, and really, if we saw an improvement in these indicators, did they really mean that our natural environment was in fact improving?
So, where do you go from here? How do you build on these indicators?
Well, I guess the next thing is to make sure that we see the kind of progress that we want to. And what that means is that the policies and the programs that we develop from here on in have to be designed so that they produce results. So just to give you a couple of examples, one of the areas where we didn't see the kind of progress we were hoping to was in the area of transportation. And we found that so many Richmond residents are still taking their car to and from work, and we wanted to see more people taking alternative forms of transportation like transit, like cycling and walking. Well, the interesting thing is the city doesn't have control over transit. We negotiate with another governmental agency on that one, but we do have control over things like our sidewalks and our cycling routes. So what we want to do is to try to build the infrastructure to make it more attractive for people to choose the environmentally friendly alternative. We can't force them to do that, but if we do our part in making it as attractive an option as possible, I think we will see results next time around. So that's one example. Another indicator that we saw as an area where we needed to do some work was the whole issue of water conservation. And you may wonder, well, in this rainforest, why we need to bother with water conservation. And the issue is that we get our drinking water from reservoirs up in the mountains, and to build those reservoirs, first of all, it's an incredible outlay of capital, but secondly, it wipes out a lot of pristine habitat when you build a new reservoir. So given that in summer months we don't get the kind of rain that we do in the winter, and our reservoirs start to really dry up, and we worry about whether we're going to have enough water, we want to try to encourage all residents, not just in Richmond but in the Lower Mainland, to consume water more prudently. And one area where we're not so prudent is in watering our gardens. So one of the things that we're doing in the city, for example, is we're trying to help educate people and get them more aware of the need to conserve water even in this rainy climate where we live. So next weekend we're going to be having a water-wise gardening workshop with a wonderful landscape architect who can show people how to design beautiful gardens that use less water. So these are some of the kinds of things that we're looking at. And also when we do our official community plan and when we plan how we're managing our growth, we again take into consideration what kind of results we want to see next time on our report.
Going back to transportation, what are some of the indicators that were related to transportation?
Well, one of the indicators that we looked at was average vehicle per household ownership. Another indicator that we looked at was our network of pedestrian-friendly streets. You might kind of wonder, well, what is a pedestrian-friendly street? There are a lot of different opinions on that. In a lot of suburbs, you see streets that have either no sidewalks or have the sidewalk right up against the road, and you'll see these busy highways where cars are racing back and forth, and the poor pedestrian is kind of feeling a little uncomfortable, and it's noisy and unpleasant. What we try to do here in Richmond is our new streets, we develop to a standard that we've set, a sort of a basic pedestrian-friendly standard. As you can see here, we have trees buffering the pedestrian, and also some bollards in this case, but we have some trees protecting the pedestrian from oncoming traffic. So it's a much more pleasant, quiet, green, attractive environment for walking on. Another thing we do, so the minimum standard basically is having sidewalks that are buffered from the street with a tree boulevard. Now, sometimes we get a little fancier. As you can see here, we've got some nice benches, and we have a park here, and some really wonderful street lighting. But as a bare minimum, having the trees in between the pedestrian and the traffic is a really important thing. So we're trying to measure how much of our street network is developed to that standard. And right now, about 3%. I know that's a small number, but actually in some places it's 0%. So I think we're actually doing very well.
We're in Richmond, British Columbia, talking with Dave Semple, who's Director of Parks. What do parks have to do with the environment we're standing in right now?
That's always a good question. Here we are sitting on a street, and we're asking where the parks are. This whole environment is a park to us. One of the things that we've done in terms of breaking out who does what is to ensure that there's a park-like atmosphere on the streets. And this is being a pedestrian corridor, we're actively involved. So when you see the street furniture, when you see bicycle racks, you see the trees and lighting, that's the Parks Department working with other associations and agencies to make things happen for our pedestrians. What we like to think, we're pedestrian friendly, at least in parks.
Now this looks like a fairly new environment behind us. Is it better than what was there before?
Oh boy, this was the challenge. Richmond is in a transition or in change from a suburb to old systems now into a much stronger urban form. And working with our own planning department and urban development, we're starting to take back the streets back for the pedestrians. So you see here, gone are the 1.5 meter sidewalks, the small areas, traffic right up to a larger plaza area for people to enjoy and to walk and to get people back onto our streets. And that's the challenge we're going to for the year 2000 and the millennium, and it's kind of exciting.
And how do you go about this? I mean, there's so much of the city doesn't have sidewalks that are up to standard. What do you do first?
Well, that's another important one. It's in working with our own planning department, what you first have to define is what your city center is, and we're standing in the beginning of the city center. From there, you work your way out. So working with our urban development department, we've said we want to make the city center a friendly pedestrian place. You're seeing the beginnings, and that's where we're working to now. We're working our way out in concentric circles to make this place work. As more and more people come, because we expect another 25,000 people living in the city center, we want them to feel comfortable here. We want them to feel safe and secure. And it's our challenge is to make that happen, and that's what we're doing here today.
And you're working from the city center out. You're also surrounded by the rest of the metropolitan area. How do you work together? I mean, does that come into conflict then?
Actually, it doesn't come into conflict at all. We have an organization, the Greater Vancouver Regional District, and we have a planning section there that is looking at greenways and connections with each of the cities. So through them, we're connected with all our other cities together, looking at how we can connect and be partner so we cross bridges and lines together. That organization has already started, and we're making that connection. Pretty soon, our goal is you can go one end of the Greater Vancouver District right through to the other by using street areas, corridors, greenways, you name it. and that challenge is being done by a whole group of people who feel the same way. Luckily in Vancouver, there's a number of planners and parks people like ourselves that are working towards that goal, so it's very exciting.
What's Richmond going to look like 20 years from now?
Well, we're going to be walking, millions of people will be walking past us, enjoying the sights. You're going to see a lot more cycling on our roads, and you'll see some of these areas today in your travels. We'll have the transportation network where we have mass transit, and you'll see less cars here. That's the whole thing that we want to go to. Less cars, more transit, more people enjoying the streets.
We're in Bethesda, Maryland, at the intersection of Bradley Boulevard and Goldsboro Road. This is our intersection of the month. 2 years ago, the corner of Bradley and Goldsboro was our intersection of the month. Unfortunately, very little has changed since then. On December 2nd, 1998, a pedestrian was struck and killed while trying to cross Bradley here. It was a 69-year-old woman attempting to return to her home. The 6-page police report has the conclusion the primary causative factor in this collision was the failure of the pedestrian to grant right-of-way to the automobile. But that doesn't really tell you the story. This is an actuated signal. The signal will only change red for the cars on Bradley when it's actuated by a car waiting on Goldsboro. Normally when you have an actuated signal, there'd be a pedestrian button, so a pedestrian could also actuate the signal. But there is no pedestrian button here. The person wanting to cross on foot has to wait until a car comes down Goldsboro to trigger the light. But at 10 o'clock at night, you might have to wait several minutes for a car. Even if you were to wait, the green light only lasts 7 seconds until it starts changing. Hardly enough time for an elderly woman to make her way all the way across 6 lanes of heavy traffic. The cause of this crash goes well beyond the simple failure to grant right-of-way in the police report. It's the failure of the system to provide the pedestrian any way of obtaining the right-of-way. We hope the county takes a look at this intersection that goes beyond the police report.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.